So today, talking about content that converts, how to create content that educates, entertains, and converts. And quite often, organizations think about content being educational, not always thinking about the actual conversion aspect of content. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what some of the things that we've done in the past that have really helped make content achieve those goals. So just very quickly on the agenda, so we want to just talk about what content's for. We'll also talk about customer personas as well, or customer personae, to use the correct, I think, Latin version of pluralization. And we'll be also talking about social media and how it can be so powerful when it comes to content. Also a little bit about copywriting frameworks, because creating content can sometimes feel like a bit of a lonely job, and actually we know that there are many copywriting frameworks out there that help you get that job done. And also search engine optimization, which is a great thing to really top off when you've got some good content, how to make it really work for you. And then we'll talk about how you can get started. So first of all, what is content for? Well, content primarily has to be relevant and useful. Has to be relevant to the audience and useful for them. It should really educate and motivate the audience. It should also demonstrate the value of your company or your products and services. And ultimately, it should create a compelling event, some action that you want the reader to go and do after reading or viewing that content. So just first of all, what are the main content types? We probably know most of these, and I'm sure we know all of them, in fact. But just to recap, social media, most organizations, of course, are on social media. Also, blogs and case studies are really useful forms of content that really get more information across than you can do in a social media post, for example. Of course, we know that there are newsletters going out to email lists, and we all know that companies often send out weekly, fortnightly, or monthly newsletters. Then there's richer types of content like podcasts and videos and webinars like today. And then there's the content that actually comes from third parties, and that's often things like testimonials and reviews. We're not always lucky enough to co-write testimonials with customers, so sometimes there's some content out there that's written by other people, but it's still very useful. We'll get onto that in a short time. And then there's other more product or solutionized kind of content like infographics and guides. So, but why bother with content, actually? Why bother creating it in the first place? Well, Demand Metric wrote that businesses with a blog get 67% more leads than others. So by having a blog on your website, you're able to do something quite special in terms of attracting leads to come to your website and then hopefully carry out an action that you would like them to carry out. And also, according to HubSpot, 47% of buyers will view 3 to 5 pieces of content before engaging. And that could be with a sales rep or else reaching the part of your sales funnel where they complete, for example, an online purchase. So if you think about that, the 3 to 5 pieces of content, that doesn't have to be 3 to 5 blog posts. It's quite a lot of reading involved. It might take 10 minutes to read a blog post and they're not going to read 3. But it might be that there's 3 interactions, so there might be a piece of content on social media. So a post takes you then to a blog post, which then takes you to a product page. And the product page might be where you make the purchase, or maybe where you get referred to a salesperson. So you can see how quickly that chain of content, that chain of interaction builds up to actually deliver the outcome that you want. Marketing is, of course, all about getting the right message in front of the right people. So it's important to know the who and the what of who are writing for and what needs they have. And also what in their job and their company do they have to overcome on a daily basis sometimes, and what motivates them both in their job and at a company level, but also in their personal life. What do they want to achieve? So by understanding all of these things, we get to know a little bit more about who we're talking to. and it could be anyone. Probably for a lot of people here, it's probably a business. It's probably an organization that has specific needs which you're addressing on a B2B basis. In a lot of cases, of course, it would be B2C as well. But it's really important to understand the customer persona. And here we can see three very high-level examples of customer persona. We've given them a photograph, which is a piece of stock imagery. We've also given them a name and a job title, and also an example of the type of organization that they are in. However, it goes much deeper than that, and we're going to just talk a little bit about how you create those customer personas, and then we'll get on to how you actually use that information as part of your content and copywriting process. So how do we create these customer personas to begin with? And I apologize, I keep using the wrong plural form, but it just comes quite naturally. So the first thing we should do is actually research our target audience to know who the customers are, or the potential buyers. So we should understand a little bit more about the people who we're expecting to buy our product and service. And we can do that by doing things like conducting customer surveys, so we can get quite detailed insights about what potential buyers are looking for directly. And that could be your own surveys, or it could be surveys that you run through a platform like SurveyMonkey, or indeed a paid audience or focus groups. You then need to refine that data, and we'll give you some examples of that in a moment, in order to create that customer persona. And having this semi-fictional description of your customer segment is really important, because it not only helps you when it comes to marketing, but it also helps some other parts of the business as well. So having that customer persona is really going to help you identify that target audience and understand their needs and their pains. So what are their pains, and how might your solution match with those pains? It will help you craft persona-oriented copy that really resonates with the reader, or the potential buyer. So again, matching up kind of solution space with problem space is really important here. And then it helps you develop a more successful marketing strategy as well, because if you know who your audience is at a very personal level, it will also help you understand where you need to place your content, where you need to go to spread that word. And then also, the great thing about persona profiles is it not only helps marketing, but it also helps you with your products and your services. So understanding the pain points that users and potential buyers have will help you change what you're doing with your products, and maybe can feed into product development teams and make better products that are loved by buyers. So what we've done is we've tried to take an organization in somewhat of I suppose, an adjacent industry, and we've taken an example of Datadog. For most people probably know Datadog, but they're a SaaS-based data analytics platform. So here's an example of a persona profile, and as I said, the presentation here will be shared after the event, but we're also going to be sharing a more detailed view at creating these persona profiles, so you'll have lots of information to go away and do this yourself. So here we've given a name and a job title. Obviously we need to sort of know who this is. As I said before, we've also given a stock profile image as well, to make this feel a little bit more real, a little bit more human. And in the description, we've kind of given a very high-level view of what this person does. They have to solve business challenges, understand their customers' behavior in order to scale the company. So we also have identified their decision-making power. So if they have final sign-off, we will have content that may be used at that stage of the process. However, though, because they get involved at all sales stages, we need to also make sure they're fully informed so that they can grow an understanding of a product or a service in order to then get to the later stage of actually making a purchase. We need to understand the company size. So what types of organizations would buy this product and where this persona would work. And that's useful because it helps us place ads and social media posts and articles in the right places. So, for example, particular LinkedIn groups, maybe on certain third-party blogs that are relevant to the size of company, but also the industry. And then also understanding a little bit about the education is useful as well in terms of how you pitch the copy that you're writing. So making sure, if you think that the person's going to be quite well educated, perhaps that changes a little bit of the language that you use in an article. Probably the most important bit, though, is understanding their needs. So we also call this jobs to be done, JTBD. And jobs to be done are just that. It's what they do in their job. So understanding their needs, we also match that up against what the product or service can do. So we're able to say whether their needs are not met, partially met, or fully met by the product that we're promoting. So that's very useful because we don't ever want to go out and lie about what we do or a product or a service or a company. So perhaps if there's something that the product cannot do, we might not want to focus so much on that in our content and our copy. So again, understanding those complex technical platforms is a key part of this person's job. Reporting on trends, budgeting for non-technical staff, even though this is a technical person, is an important thing for them to do. But they also have to worry about things like customer SLAs and responding to problems. So very clear what their main needs are in their job role. We've also given some example companies, and that's useful because these are example target companies that might help you build what we call like a lookalike audience. So when you're, for example, running targeted ads, you might actually want to generate a list of lookalike companies that you want to target your ads towards. So it becomes very useful when you're thinking about the targeting and the placement of your content. And then also geographies. So geographies are useful not only from a placement perspective. You want to make sure that if there are regional platforms that serve particular locations, like maybe there's a North American forum or a UK forum. Also understanding if English, for example, is the right language to be using with that particular target. So all of these things give you this fully rounded picture of the person and the type of person that you want to appeal to. And it should all go into informing the writing that comes after. Because if you talk like your customers and prospects, it really helps. So you need to make sure you're collecting feedback across different channels, using customer vocabulary to build trust. If you talk like the person that you're selling to, that you're talking to in your content, it helps to build that trust. Then addressing the pain points in your copy helps the reader feel like you understand what they go through, what they need, and that creates a better relationship. So where can you get that kind of customer feedback that helps to inform that vocabulary? Well, great places are blog comments. So going into your own blog or third-party blogs on similar subjects to what your product and service is, you can see what people are talking about, what types of language they're using. Same with interest groups. For example, if there are special interest groups on LinkedIn or Reddit or these types of sites, which of course is where social media comes in, and Twitter is a great source. You get lots of people going on and complaining about certain products that don't do certain things, and helps you understand where the market and customers' pain points are. You can also do surveys and send out feedback forms, but it's important here not to just ask the friendly customers, of course, because they're likely to give you a bit of a rose-tinted kind of view on your product or service. So although that's important, it's important to get a rounded view. So you can use your own audience, or you can use third-party audience through surveying tools, for example. Also looking at reviews and testimonials. Again, you really start to understand the language that they use, the particular ways they describe the technology, and also how they not only describe what you do in reviews about your company, but also in reviews about competitors. You might actually spot something that a competitor does badly, but actually your product does really well. And I'm not saying you should go out and start talking badly about your competitors, but you can start to promote the thing that your product does and hope it appeals to those people who complain about the competitor product. So again, looking at all of these different platforms really gives you a good rounded view of the language used, the needs and the problems that you can address. And you can see that coming through actually in the example that we gave of Datadog. So you can see here they've talked about see it all in one place, your servers, your clouds, and your metrics. This understanding of complex platforms in one place, this simplification. You can also see here as well in the product pages, in product descriptions, they go into a little bit more detail than you can in a hero image about some of the key benefits, being able to quickly search, filter, and analyze, understanding when there are problems, how to monitor and troubleshoot and optimize performance, all of these things that this target persona complains about. And then in blogs, you get a little bit more freedom than you would on a product description or a hero, because you've got a much greater word count really to deal with. People aren't generally going to read a very long product description, but someone who finds a subject that appeals to them, that talks about their needs and problems, is more likely to read, for example, a blog that might take 10 minutes, as opposed to a product description, which should take certainly less than 20 seconds. So you get much more freedom to explore a subject, squeeze in more keywords, which helps with search engines, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you can really see in a blog, you've got a lot more room to play with. And then, of course, across social media, and in a social post, you get a lot less space, I should say, to talk about the needs and the problems. So you've got to be very efficient. You've got to really focus in on the core of the issue. But actually, by having a call to action of reading an article and moving further, you can go into a little bit more detail behind the scenes. But certainly, it gives you a little bit less space to play around with keywords on social media. And on that subject, I'd like to pass over to Snejana, who is going to talk about social.
Thank you, team. Hi again. My name is Snejana. I'm content marketing specialist at Fractional teams. And today I will give you some useful insights into creating compelling social media content. We'll start with the question, why should you be present on social media? The answer is quite simple. Social media is where you can connect and engage with your target audience. By choosing the right channels and publishing relevant and attractive content, you can achieve greater results. So what you can do? You can communicate with unknown buyers, as your business can connect with any prospect from anywhere and at any time. You can engage with your current customers by sharing company updates, talking about your value proposition, and getting customer feedback on your business to find the gaps and do better. Social media can help you generate more leads and increase sales. As people are getting complicated, they are tough nuts to crack. They tend to choose brands they heard something about or seen somewhere. And social media presence plays a vital role here. It's a great way to be seen, heard, and noticed. Finally, social media can help you reduce the cost of acquisition, as social media advertising is cheaper and more effective than traditional marketing and PR. Your ads can reach a lot of people who are your target audience and are more likely to buy or do business with you. Of course, to succeed in social media, you need great content. By putting the right words in the right order and choosing compelling, eye-catching visuals, you can generate your prospects' interest and motivate them to take action. It's supposed to be that way, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. Some companies make minor copywriting mistakes. For instance, look at the copy telling us about Microsoft 365 update. Let's explore what's wrong here. So, firstly, this copy is thunderous. It's hard to read because the sentences are too long. On top, the author jumps from one idea to another, adding conjunctions. Instead, good copy should read and sound with it. Then your prospect won't have any issues reading and understanding it. Secondly, we see that author says new Microsoft 365 tools and improvements. And here he repeats, already launched. So this already launched and new, here we're talking about the same thing. We can just cut this out, already launched, and our copy will be shorter and more concise. Thirdly, this copy doesn't have a call to action. Every copy should have a clear call to action, so a prospect knows what to do next. I guess in this copy, the author wants people to read the blog. So they couldn't send something like, check out more in our blog. It's the simplest call to action. And finally, a persuasive copy is whether you're writing a social media post, sales page, or blog, your copy should be structured and well planned. This copy is incoherent. It doesn't have a basic structure like an introduction, body, conclusion, and close. So that's why we'll try to rewrite this copy. And here we start our copy with a question. It's an attention grabber that provokes and motivates to read on. After we spread the word about Microsoft's new features and tools, generating our prospect interest. Finally, we add an engaging call to action. As you can see, effective copy is simple, easy to read, concise, and well-structured. If your copy is like that, it can work out. Of course, it isn't easy, and we all have this question, how to structure our copy. There are no magic formula or gut feeling that tells you how to write great copy, but there are some copywriting frameworks that might help. Copywriting framework is a general step-by-step method for writing copy. It helps you organize your copy for social media, website pages, ads, emails, and so on. So how does it work? It shows you what to open with, what to write next, and how to finish your copy to persuade your prospect to act. we'll take a closer look and see how they work. So we'll review each copywriting framework, taking real examples from the social media page of Ring Central. Here you see the first copywriting framework called ADA. It's the most popular one, and I think many of you heard something about it. So ADA stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. Our first line grabs our prospects' attention, but because it's addressing to them. After we generate interest by talking about some updates. So moving on, we are building desire. Sorry, team, previous one. Yeah, thank you. So we build desire by talking how our prospects can benefit from this. And in the end, we add a clear call to action, learn more. A second one is 4Ps. It stands for promise, picture, proof, and prompt. We start our copy with a promise. Then we paint a picture of this promise coming to life. We also support our argument with proof by saying what the benefits are and calling our prospects to prompt action. And our last copywriting framework is PS. And just for your information, it's commonly used for emails as it works there best. So PS stands for problem, agitation, and solution. We raise a problem and hook our readers. After that, we agitating them. For example, we agitating our prospects to join the webinar. And in the end, we talk about the solution that solves the agitated problem. In the end, we can also add another call to action. So feel free to use these copywriting frameworks to write concise, structured, and engaging copies. Now we are going to talk about SEO, and I will pass the word to Tim again.
Great, thanks, Snezhana. That's great. So search engine optimization, why is it important? And I'm just very conscious that we're running a little bit over, so I'll just speed my way slightly through some of this. So why is SEO important? Well, how does SEO work, and what is it for? So really the number one focus of SEO should be creating valuable content, and we also must focus on things like targeting keywords, and the ultimate goal here is building a domain authority and a reputation for the website in order to gain more exposure in search engine results. So we'll look at these points in a little bit more detail. So some of the tips for SEO would be to look at keywords. So you might find that you've got lots of keywords that relate to your brand name or your product name. But if a prospect or potential buyer doesn't know your company and doesn't know your brand names, they may search for different things. So for example, if you had a SIP trunking product, you might find that a prospect might search for SIP trunking providers, but they might also search for something different, like ISDN replacement, or what do I do when the PSTN closes, or something like that. So making sure that you've identified the right keywords is not an obvious thing. It needs a little bit of thought. You need to think about a strategy for that, and then to make sure they get incorporated into your copy. But most importantly, that copy shouldn't just be stuffed with keywords to the point where it actually affects its quality. So it should be for humans first, and search engine second. So basically, while keywords are important, Google is so sophisticated, and of course other search engines, but Google is the one we all know. It's become a verb in its own right. That it's so sophisticated now that it is able to understand when something has been written by a human for a human. Of course, there are AI platforms that will write copy for you. And I think they're okay, as long as you do make sure you edit them and you check them to make sure things make sense. And I'm sure no one would just dump AI created copy directly onto their website. It's also important to look at how the content is formatted, making sure that if you are lucky enough to be, top of the Google rankings, that you've got things like feature snippets where you get these nice, rich search engine page results where it explains a little bit more about your product and what to expect when someone visits your site. Another way to do that is by optimizing metadata. So one example is a meta description. So you've all seen when you search for something on Google, you get a title of the page and you get a short description after it. Now, a lot of people on their websites actually, surprisingly sometimes, leave that meta description to be something quite basic and generic. That's really your one opportunity to hook the reader into clicking your link, visiting your web page, and maybe buying something. So thinking about all of these things like metadata, like your titles that come up in the search engine are really key. And it's also worth looking at your competitors. You might find that you're trying to compete with a really big provider that has a fantastic ranking for particular keywords, and you might decide that actually there's not a lot of points in trying to fight them on that, but you might like to fight on more niche use cases or more niche keywords that get used. So it's all about looking for opportunities, seeing what competitors are doing, see what your chance of success is, and then really building a keyword strategy on that basis. But it's not all about the writing. Of course, there are technical things as well that you need to think about with SEO. Google heavily favors websites that are mobile friendly. So having a responsive design of your website, so when someone goes from desktop to mobile, they have equally as good an experience, is such an important thing. So Google will negatively affect your ranking if your website does not render well on mobile. That could be a number of things. It could be like your text being too small for mobile. It could be that your menu doesn't work properly, or it could be that text extends beyond the size of the screen. So just think about most people who are, for example, going from social media to your website, or might be clicking on a search engine result from their mobile, and they will be viewing, probably on the train or something like that. They'll be viewing your web page, and they may make a decision about whether they talk to you, whether they engage any further with your website on the basis of how good it looks on mobile. Speeding up the website is really important as well. So you might have a web server hosting in the UK, but if you might have customers who are outside the UK. So it's really important to make sure that, that they are served equally as well. So content delivery networks, or CDN, can be deployed to make sure that everyone in the world, if needed, gets as good an experience of viewing your website. Also optimizing the structure. If the website is poorly structured with 5 or 6 level deep menus and things like that, it's going to be very hard to navigate, very hard to get around, and it's really important that structure, how the website is put together, is really user friendly. Also fixing duplicate content issues. So that could be duplicating or plagiarizing content from other websites, but also potentially, reusing content on your own website and having cannibalization of traffic, where you're effectively drawing your audience in 2 different directions on your own website. So that's a really important thing to think about. And then also errors. So, there are obvious errors, like, your website goes down and it's a 404 error. But you can even have errors of missing files. So, for example, you might have a blog, you might have an image, a picture on that blog. someone logs into the web server, deletes the image, forgets that you'd written a blog that used that image, and suddenly you've got a 400 error that basically says there's a missing image. Now, Google will heavily penalize you for that type of problem. So again, all of these things make the website look and feel bad, and Google will downscore you on that basis. So SEO is one of those things that you really want to get right at the end, or even at the start, because if you've invested time and money in building all of that content, building your personas, using copywriting frameworks, making sure everything looks great, sounds great, it reads really well, you don't want SEO to fail you at the end, and you don't get the visitors coming and viewing the content and carrying out the action that you wanted them to. So just to recap, I guess, people often say that when it comes to content and copywriting, you need to be spending sort of somewhere between 60 and 70% of your time as a copywriter on research, and that's really important. And customer persona is a big part of that. Making sure that the content you create is useful. It's actually useful to a human. It's not just written because it's got some keywords in it, or it's not just written because it's something that you should do. It has to engage, and you can use the frameworks that we talked about, and we'll also share after the event, in order to craft that effective copy. Snejana also talked about social media and how actually it's a really great way of getting your message out to an audience that might be a cold audience, in a much cheaper way than paying for adverts. And then, as I said, finally, working on SEO, improving ranking, in order that you are actually getting impressions. So when someone makes a search, that your website comes up on the search engine results page, the SERP as it's called. And not only does it appear, but actually someone feels strongly enough to want to click the link and go through to your website and carry out the action that you're intending them to. So that's everything for us. It's a bit of an overview. It's a bit of a taster. There's clearly not enough time today to go into detail into all of these subjects, but we're hoping to actually run a little bit more of a series and go into a bit more detail on more of these subjects in the future. As I said, we will share some assets that will be very helpful after this event. But that's everything from Fractional Teams for now.